Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Rig Crafting. I'm the Rig Crafting Dad, and in this episode we're going to upgrade the CPU cooler in our Johnsbow here. So I've got this DeepCool AK500. I pulled this out of one of my older rigs. We're going to stick this into our Johnsbow case. So why would we want to upgrade? Well, the CPU cooler that we have today, it works just fine. It's great. We can do most tasks with it. It keeps the CPU cool, but we want better thermal performance, and that's one of the reasons why we would upgrade our CPU cooler. The other is that the old one just kind of looks ugly. So we want to put in something that looks nicer and upgrade our rig. You're going to need a few tools, your screwdriver, you're going to need a Q-tip, cotton swab, and maybe a paper towel, as well as some alcohol, because we're going to have to remove the old thermal paste from the CPU before we apply the new thermal paste and CPU cooler. There's a few caveats that we'll address when installing new CPU coolers with these older 1150 or 1151 CPU sockets. Alright, so before we get started, there are two things I want to talk about. The first one is our CPU cooler fan here. It is a 4-pin, and on our Dell motherboard, that's a OptiPlex 7020, it's a 5-pin. So we need some way of converting the 4 to the 5. I have some short cables that I use for breadboards, and I'll be using those to connect the 4-pin to the 5-pin. You do want to make sure for your particular Dell or other brand that the pinout is correct for the 4-pin before you just plug it in. You may fry your fan. You don't want to do that. So just make sure that you understand the pinout on your motherboard before you plug it in. The other thing I want to talk about is the back of this motherboard has a single plate that holds both the CPU socket and the CPU cooler. So in our particular case, we have to remove the plate that holds both of those, and we have to separate them. So we need a way of separating the CPU bracket plate from the mounting bracket for the CPU cooler. The bracket that we're going to be using for a CPU cooler has male pins that we'll be attaching to, whereas the bracket that comes on our Dell has female. So we can't use the bracket on the back for this particular CPU cooler. So that's why we have to replace the back plate on our motherboard. So now we're going to start disassembling some of the components that we need out of the case before we can install the new CPU cooler. I've gone ahead and removed the CPU from the socket. We need to remove the socket itself so that we can put the new backplate on that will separate the CPU socket bracket from the cooler bracket. So here's what the back looks like, and now that we've removed the 3 screws that hold the CPU socket clamp down, we can just remove the backplate. So I just wanted to quickly show, this is the new 3D printed bracket for our CPU socket. So this will hold the mounting hardware for the CPU itself and allow us then to mount our CPU cooler hardware separately. And now we're going to clean the old thermal paste off of the CPU. For this, I like to use the alcohol and a Q-tip, and I just kind of go over all the thermal paste with the Q-tip. Just get it wet, and then I let it sit for a little while. So I'll come back when that's done. So we've now got all the thermal paste off, so we can install the back plate that came with our AK500. Alright, so we've got our bracket that's going to hold the CPU cooler in. So now we're going to install the thermal paste and apply the CPU on top. There's a couple different ways to apply the thermal paste. You can do a pea size in the very center. You can do 5 dots. You can squiggle it across, or you can spread it out yourself evenly. It really doesn't matter as long as you don't apply too much. So we're just going to do a pea size in the middle. Before we install the DeepCool AK500, I just want to point out that these are the mounting screws that the unit will attach to. So when we place our CPU cooler down, we want to make sure that the screws align with those 2 points. Now we'll carefully drop our CPU cooler in, aligning the holes there. Right here is a hole, and DeepCool provides their own screw for screwing down this side. So you want to do a couple turns each side just to make sure that you get even distribution of the thermal paste. Now I've gone ahead and connected the CPU fan, and so here you can see this is where the 5-pin connector would be. I've connected 4 of the wires because our DeepCool is a 4-pin. I've gone ahead and installed the fan. It's not hard. It has these little brackets here. They attach to the side of the CPU cooler itself, and they're a little bit flexible, so you just kind of pry them and it'll connect right on. So now we finished our CPU cooler installation. We're going to quickly take a look at the thermals. I used Prime 95 to just throw 100% at the CPU on the old cooler, and then I did the same thing with the new cooler. So we can compare what the thermal load is for this new CPU cooler over the old one. In today's episode, we upgraded our CPU cooler using an air cooler. If you like this video, if you have questions, leave me a comment. You can also like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. On the next video, we're going to install a water cooler instead of an air cooler, so stay tuned for that video.